The Board of County Commissioners acts as a quasi-judicial body when it hears requests for rezoning and conditional use permits. Applicants must provide competent, substantial evidence establishing facts or expert witness opinion testimony showing that the request meets the zoning code and comprehensive plan criteria. Opponents must also testify as to facts or provide expert testimony whether they like or dislike a request is not competent evidence. The board must then decide whether the evidence demonstrates consistency and compatibility with the comprehensive plan and the existing rules in the zoning ordinance, property adjacent to the property to be rezoned, and the actual development of the surrounding area. The board cannot consider speculation, non-expert opinion testimony, or poll the audience by asking those in favor or opposed to stand up or raise their hands. If a commissioner has had communications regarding a rezoning or conditional use permit request before the board, the commissioner must disclose the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place before the board takes action on the request. Likewise, if a commissioner has made a site visit, inspection, or investigation, the commissioner must disclose that fact before the board takes action on the request. Each applicant is allowed a total of 15 minutes to present their request, unless time is extended by majority vote of the board. The applicant may reserve any portion of the 15 minutes for rebuttal. Other speakers are allowed 5 minutes to speak. Speakers may not pass their time to someone else in order to give that person more time to speak.
Good evening and welcome to the September 6, 2018 zoning meeting of the Brevard County Commissions. We have a quorum, so I'll call this meeting to order. If you'd please take a moment of silence with us. Commissioner Tabaya.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we move into the zoning portion of the meeting, we have consent agenda. Would any of the commissioners like any of these items pulled and heard separately? Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Barfield, second by Commissioner Tabaya. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, passes 5-0. Items 1, 2, 5, and 6 have an automatic table. I think Ms. Aaron is going to read them into the record, and then we'll entertain a motion to table these items.
Yes, so item H1 is a proposal by Anthony Lopes and Eugene Lamondo, represented by Scott Knox, requesting a small-scale comp plan amendment from Res 2 and neighborhood commercial to community commercial on a property in District 3. Item H2 is a proposal by the same requesters requesting a rezoning from BU1 and TR3 to all BU1, and that property is in District 3 as well. Item 5 is a proposal by Christian Missionary Alliance, Southeast District, represented by Matt Kaysen, requesting a small-scale comp plan amendment from Res 4 to community commercial. And the item 6 is a proposal by the same applicants requesting a rezoning from institutional light to BU1, and that all of those have been requesting to table to the October 4th, 2018 BCC meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. Can I have a motion to table to October 4, 2018?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Barfield, second. Second. By Commissioner Isnardi. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, passes 5-0. Moving into item 3, ma'am.
And item 3 is a proposal by Eva McMillan, trustee, represented by Clayton Bennett, requesting a small-scale comp plan amendment from private conservation to Res 1. This property is 1.22 acres in size, located on the west side of, pardon me. The property is 0.3 acres in size, located on the west side of Highway A1A, just south of Boudreaux Road. Item 4 is a companion rezoning application, so I'll read that into the record and you can discuss both, from EA to SR on the same property.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Tobias, I have a card on this. Would you like me to call him?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, Clayton Bennett.
Good evening, Board. My name is Clayton Bennett with Bennett Engineering and Consulting. I'm here tonight on behalf of Ms. McMillan, who's brought the request here before the Board. Our request here is we've got a zoning and a comp plan use, which is private conservation. And these lines run about 100 feet west of State Road A1A. And the parcel runs from A1A to the river. And when the zoning and the comp plan were put into place, the lines were somewhat arbitrary, being that they're about, like I said, about 100 feet west of A1A. What we're looking to do is, since the purchase of this property, we've had a environmental study done on the property through Atlantic Environmental, and that's been accepted by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. We've had the line surveyed, and what we're looking to do is to move the private conservation back to the wetland line along with the SR zoning to move it to the wetland line. We've worked with staff assembling the application, and historically this was done previously, and staff had documented that it was done administratively. I think since that time they've made a determination that they want this to go to the board because it's dealing with the comp plan. And so we're going from about 1/4 of an acre to about 1/2 an acre that will be of the Res 1 in the SR zoning classification. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to address those.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, your pleasure. Commissioner Barfield.
Yes, this is, when you look at the property, it's very consistent with what's happened to the north and to the south of him, of his property, where they are just getting this reevaluated to make it, it's really consistent with the others, so I don't have any problem with it at all.
I'm in agreement. Commissioners?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Commissioner Isnardi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Barfield. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, sir.
Just to clarify the record, that was for 3 and 4.
We're doing them both together? You don't want separate motions? Aaron requested separate. One's good?
Sure.
It's fine. We've
Okay.
clarified the record.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, sometimes you make me do too. Okay. We're going to move over to item 7.
Item 7 is a proposal by the Housing Authority of Brevard County, represented by Michael Bean, Stephen Monroe, and Scott Knox, requesting a change of zoning classification from PUD to RU215. The property is 11.88 acres in size, located on the south side of Citrus Boulevard, just west of State Road 3, and this property is in the Merritt Island redevelopment area.
Mr. Knox.
Scott Knox, representing the applicant. I am from Wiederman Malik Law Firm in Melbourne, and I have several items to hand out to you before I get started, if that's okay. Starting with a sworn statement from Mr. Michael Bean, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Housing Authority, who is with me. He's seated in the back there. If you need any questions, he'll be here to answer them.
Yes, sir.
And next, I have a request for administrative or official notice of notice documents, which are attached in part of the copy. Also distribute to you.
I think so.
And last but not least is the PowerPoint presentation. Everybody got those in front of them? Let me start by saying this is a request for a rezoning to residential 15. If you look at page 2 of the PowerPoint presentation, you'll see the property is the U-shaped property that has the, actually if you go to page 3, you'll see it better. It's 6.89 acres on the northern end of the property. There's a little connector piece of 1.05 acres and a southern piece of 3.94 acres, all of which we're seeking RU215 zoning for. The property is designated as our residential 15 on the land use plan, so it is consistent with that land use plan. And originally it was zoned as PUD. It's no longer zoned as PUD because the PUD expired in 2008, so the property doesn't have any zoning right now, which is why we're before you seeking the RU215, which is this is 15 units per acre, which is allowed under the residential 15. Page 5 of the PowerPoint, you'll see where the property lies. It's between Citrus Avenue on the north, Citrus Boulevard, and the southern piece is in proximity to Minna Road, which is a county-maintained road, according to Mr. Denninghoff, who I spoke with about that. And if you turn to page 6 of the PowerPoint, you'll see the layout that is being proposed. There are 2 buildings on the northern piece, which are designed to house about 60 units each, for a total of 120. Those will be 3-story buildings, and if you take a look at the very first page of the PowerPoint exhibit, you'll see the landscape or rendering of the particular buildings that will be used. It'll be something similar to that, maybe not exactly, but something very similar. They're very attractive buildings. This will not be low-income housing. This will be housing designed to house workforce individuals, people who are firefighters, EMS people, nurses, teachers, things like that. That's the income range they're looking for. On the southern piece of property, if you get back on page 6, you'll see 1-story buildings that are designed to house a total of 48 units, 12 units each. And if you turn to page 8, you'll get a rendering of what those buildings will look like. And in fact, if you turn to page 10, you'll get an actual picture of what one of the buildings that's been built in a similar project down South Florida looks like. They're very attractive, very well maintained, very well landscaped. Page 9 of the exhibit shows you the interior of one of the buildings, which is very attractive. And having been to one of these projects, I've seen this actually exists in that format. It's just not a picture. So the purpose for these, for putting this particular zoning on this particular property is that the Housing Authority wants to market to a full rent-paying market of workforce folks who are in the types of professions I explained to you. The goal is to create a range of rent between $950 a month to $1,500 a month, which happens to fit the sweet spot of demand in this area. And if you look over at page 17, you'll see that. These are figures taken from the 2017 HUD Palm Bay, Melbourne, Titusville Comprehensive Housing Market Analysis prepared by HUD. And you'll see the big demand for rental housing is somewhere in the neighborhood of the $950 per month range to the $1,349 per month range. The Housing Authority is looking for to provide housing in the $850 to $1,500 range. So it fits right into that sweet spot for which there's a large demand. And to explain that demand, go back to page 15 of the PowerPoint, and you'll see another page from the HUD report in 2017 indicating that the total demand for rental units in Brevard County over the period from December 1st, 2017 to 2020 is about almost 2,000 units. It's 1,975 units. And at that time, in late 2017, only 730 were under construction. My client has a waiting list of 1,600 people who are qualified under the program that they're looking for to serve this workforce that they're trying to provide housing for, of 1,600 people. They're just waiting to get into these places. There's large demand for them. I know that in 2017, if you look over exhibit to page 17, you'll see there was a 2.4 vacancy rate on rental housing in Brevard County. And if my son's efforts to find rental housing were any indication, it's gone down. It's probably less than that now, 2018. So there's a big demand for rental housing. Again, if you look now at page 16, you'll see that roughly 72% of the households being formed since 2010 have been for rental housing. They want rental housing. They don't want to buy houses. That's compared to 33% during the period from 2000 forward. So the market for rental is up. There's not a lot of spaces available in this price range that we're looking at, and this is a perfect place to put it. It is west of Courtney in Merritt Island. It is behind another project that is a rental unit location that has less of a rental rate than what these folks are going to have on this piece of property. And I think the project is well suited for this area. There is some single-family residential in the north and south, but there's also commercial on the east, on the entire front. If you look at the site plan, which is set forth on page 3, I think. Let's see. Sorry, it's on page 5. Page 7. You'll see the traffic pattern is internalized quite a bit. The entryway will be off of Citrus Boulevard, at least that's the planned entryway. And the property will be connected from north to south by a road that's on the property, which then ties into Minna Lane, which is, as I mentioned, a publicly dedicated and maintained road. And you have two exits that are right turn only that go onto Courtney. But the traffic pattern now allows, it's just Citrus that has that exit formally for this property. So we'll be trying to add that one extra exit, which provides a better circulation internally and cuts down the trips that are going back and forth. So if there are any other questions, I think you can turn over to page 21 might be of interest to you. This is another chart that's been taken out of a study done by the National Low Income Housing Coalition, and it shows specific statistics for Brevard County in terms of rental. And the interesting point there is under housing costs, where it's showing that $1,018 per month is the rent that's required to do a two-bedroom rental for a family that has to make about $40,720 a year. The target market for this particular project is in a range for individuals that range from $22,000 to $55,000, so the $40,000 is right about smack in the middle of it. And it's an area where there's, again, a big demand, and an area, it's particularly in Merritt Island, where there's a lot of folks looking to rent. So if you have any questions, I have Mr. Bean here to discuss it, and I also have the engineer here if you have any questions about the roadway or any other issues.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Okay, Ms. Barbara Chawalski.
Hi, my name is Barbara Shaleski. I live on Herwood Avenue, and we have a few concerns about this. One is, I couldn't hardly hear him about where he says the traffic's going to go, but there are only 2 streets that actually have lights off of where he's going to build off of Citrus, between Citrus and Minnow Lane and Herwood Avenue. And one of them is actually through a parking lot of a plaza that's there, so it's not actually accessible to public, public access. You'd have to go through their parking lot. And the same goes with the other one. I can show you on this. This is where they're going to build all of this here, and their traffic would have to come up here and go out here to make a right-hand turn. They can go and take a left here and go down and U-turn, but to make another right besides this one, they'd have to go through these parking lots here, out this parking lot, to make a right-hand turn off of Herwood Avenue. And I guess he's talking about going out the back way, but trust me, that's a long way for people to go. Besides, they'll be cutting through the other way. We also are curious what they're going to do about the electric grid in our area. If it barely storms, our electric goes out, and you're going to add 168 units to our electric grid in that area. There is a lot of wildlife on this area. There's scrub jays and gopher turtles. We're also worried about the crime in that area. I have several pages of police reports for just 2 streets in that area that covers a lot of pages. I guess that's about it, but we're very concerned about the traffic and coming out on her. They'd have to come in and out, because they already, since they've done that reconstruction on Courtney, they've put all that traffic to come in our street. And at the end of our street where they come in and go across this thoroughfare in front of Perone Properties, we already have several potholes that have been replaced, patched. It's crazy up there. So that's about it.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Bob Colvard?
Good evening. My name is Bob Culvert. I live in just in the neighborhood, just on the other side of where this is being proposed. I grew up on Merritt Island. I know this area. I know exactly where it is. I've known where it was, and there were apartments there before. So I'm not quite understanding what the problem is about putting apartments back where apartments already were. So that's just one thing. But the need for quality for housing that people can afford is desperate in this county. It's desperate in the state. It's desperate in our nation right now. We have a housing crisis right now. And if these folks can come in and provide housing for some middle-income people, I think it's a great thing. So I'm totally, and I live in that area, so it's not like I'm coming in from the outside, spouting stuff. I live just 1 block over on the other side of Buttonwood on North Tropical Trail. And grew up on South Merritt Island, went to Merritt Island High School, lived there pretty much all my life. And I think this is a wonderful thing, and I'd love to see the county pass this.
Thank you, sir. Miss Betty Lemon?
Betty Lemon, 115 Herwood Avenue, and I've lived there for 56 years. I'm concerned about the high crime rate that this can occur, the decrease in the property values, increase in the traffic with residents, the new residents, the fire trucks and the ambulances and the sheriff's vehicles, and need to increase the teachers and classrooms, and our taxes will increase to meet these needs. And there's already a water drainage, a major problem there, and privacy. With second and third story residents can look down into our homes and our yards. And I have seen osprey and gopher tortoises in the wooded area there. And by removing this wooded area, snakes and rats and raccoons will come to live in our yards. Okay, that's.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I have a letter that I did write, if you want that.
Do you want it for the record, or?
You want it for the record, Mom?
Okay.
You want it for the record?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steve Monroe? Oh, sorry. Mr. Jeff Wells, you'll be next, sir. I think he's part of it too, right?
Good evening, excuse me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Monroe with Monroe Engineering. I'm just here to answer any engineering questions you might have for this project.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Barfield, is that a new light, sir?
No.
Wrong number?
He's from this one.
Okay. Mr. Jeff Wells?
Good evening. Jeff Wells on behalf of Baxley Manor. The Housing Authority wants you to dissolve a PUD that they spent 240 pages getting passed back in 2005. The only thing I disagree with Mr. Knox tonight with what he said about what the PUD's status is as of this moment. He said it was expired. It's not expired. It still exists. It's just dormant. A PUD is a zoning classification, as is RU 215 industrial or commercial. So the zoning still exists. As a result, Baxley Manor has a right to the benefits of this PUD. As originally conceived, the PUD comprised 17.59 acres. 11.88 was retained by the Housing Authority. About 5.71 was sold off in 2013 to a third party and then purchased by Baxley shortly thereafter. As a result, they've created a situation where to divide the PUD and to dissolve the PUD takes rights away from Baxley Manor. Now, PUD, as you know, is an extremely liberal zoning. Allows you to do almost anything, as long as it's approved. They got it approved. It exists. It's not expired. It's a misnomer. So, all the benefits and burdens of the PUD are reciprocal with Baxley. If you dissolve the PUD, Baxley loses property rights. Baxley Manor has a 1/3 interest in the PUD. Baxley is a bona fide purchaser of its property for value. It purchased an ownership in the PUD. So as a result, dissolving the PUD takes rights away from Baxley without compensation and without due process of law. The term that the statute uses to describe the PUD now is inactive, not expired. A piece of industrial property that sits vacant before site plan approval is also inactive. Doesn't mean it loses its industrial zoning, just means that it's not being used for what it's intended. Housing Authority allowed it to lapse. They're notifying you today that it's quote-unquote expired. It was still a PUD. The PUD zoning is in place. It's legitimate and valid. It certainly doesn't mean that it reverts to RU 215 automatically. In their site plan approval packet, they said that Baxley will retain the inactive PUD zoning. I don't even know what that means. I'm not sure what rights they're conferring on Baxley, but the bottom line is Baxley owns part of the PUD. So now let's look at the effects of the PUD. Just for the purposes of discussion, let's talk about it in terms of it being a 2/3, 1/3 analysis. 11.88 acres on one side, 5.71 on the other. I'm going to round up to 12 and 6. Baxley Manor has 190 units. They want to put 178 on it. By my math, that's 368 units on the 14, almost 15 acres, or 15.24 acres that are represented by the RU 215. The zoning that you're going to approve today, if you allow a rezoning to RU215, is actually closer to 25 units per acre. Prior to the PUD, Baxley existed on a very small site, 3.86 acres. They put 190 units on 3.86 acres, but they owned the contiguous parcels all the way around as you see this site plan. So the 190 was spread out over this so that the whole parcel considered together was 190, plus they had 15 duplexes and a house, which they tore down. But it ended up as 221 units on the 15-acre parcel, slightly below RU215 zoning. Now they want to put 178 on in addition to Baxley. The zoning ends up being 25 units per acre, whether it's RU215 or not. The Housing Authority wants to have their cake and eat it too. Do I get to continue?
No, sir, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Not right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have no more comment cards. Mr. Cockings, just a quick question on that, because I asked you some questions yesterday. And if we made this change, because I was just asking you different scenarios, and I asked about the effect it would have on this gentleman's interest. And you told me it really isn't going to make any changes to it because everybody's already non-conforming and that wouldn't change anything, correct?
Yes, ma'am. So the question, I believe, was that what would be the effect on the existing PUD? The existing PUD would be allowed to remain. It is considered inactive because the preliminary development plan has expired without them carrying forward the improvements that they said they were going to make at that point when the board originally considered the PUD before. So that would remain. If they wanted to come in and make any improvements to that property, then they would have to go through a process to activate the PUD, which would just be present the board a preliminary development plan. Or they could go through the rights to get the non-conforming use confirmed through the zoning classification or through the zoning regs, which would allow them to be a non-conforming use.
Okay, so my question was that time, if we did this one way or the other, it's not going to cause
No, ma'am. The PUD district spans many parcels here, and we have zoning throughout the county that goes over many different parcels. So it would be very similar in that the PUD affected those parcels, and if the PUD were active, then that would be the guiding document that would regulate the development on those parcels. But since it's inactive, or even if it were active, they would still have the right to come in and ask for it to be amended or to be removed from the PUD.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir. Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I just want to disclose that I've spoken to Mr. Knox on this issue.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Barfield.
Yes, I've also spoken with the group, Mr. Knox, and they came in my office and we had a discussion over all this. But I'd like to go ask legal what Mr. Wells said. Give us a brief, is what he's saying, what can we do and what we can't do?
Well, the problem was created when they sold off the property, but the PUD zoning continues to exist. It's inactive. It doesn't take any rights away to rezone the property that is presented today. So the board could deny the rezoning, it could approve the rezoning, it could consider other options at a lower density. It has many options before it.
Well, if I can.
Please.
A question I have, though, if it was a PUD and then they sold off part of that, what does that impact on Baxley Manor?
Well, I think what he's trying to say is that he has property rights in the other parcels that were sold off, but Baxley Manor owns one piece, and he has rights to that piece, and what the development that is on that piece will remain. Does that answer your question?
I'm kind of confused, yeah. I'm looking at long-term. Does it put any liabilities on the county if we do this?
Well, I think he's threatening that, yes, but I think there is a procedure that was followed. They've made an application for rezoning for a portion of the property that used to be in a PUD that was active, and now the PUD has expired through their own actions, and now they're moving forward.
Still got more. This one is to Tad or Aaron. I know we discussed how all this would work. Can you go through the process? Because this is a nice plan they laid out to us, but may not be what it turns out to be, if I'm correct. Can you all explain the process? Because right now all we're doing is looking at zoning change. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, sir. So with the zoning, there's no, with the straight zoning, there's no binding plan that is presented to the board. So I think even Mr. Knox mentioned this today, that this was a conceptual plan. It's what they plan to develop. However, it may change, so it's not a binding plan. The next step would be for them to go through the site plan process. And then once we get into the site plan process, I don't know if there's a plan to subdivide the property to create tracts, but then they would have to do a subdivision if there was such a plan. And then at that point, we would get into the actual building permits.
When would it come back to the county commission again?
It would not.
Okay. Okay, I'm done for now.
Thank you, sir. I have no more. Oh, Commissioner Zanardi.
I just want to say that I met with Mr. Knox in my office about this, and I want that for the record.
Please.
Well, I would like to say that I live on Merritt Island. I've lived in that area a long time. And I wish that this group had spoken to the neighbors. And I think y'all need to do that. It's very important. They need to know exactly what's going on because they haven't seen this and they need to see it. I think that would help them an awful lot. But from what I've seen and what I've looked at and knowing the area, this can major to a major improvement. It can take care of the security issues. It can take care of a lot. And these people have not been privy to see that. So I don't know what the solution is right now, but I'm all for this, but I'm not going to sign up to anything until the neighbors, y'all can work with the neighbors on it.
I'm Michael Dean, CEO of the Housing Authority of Brevard County and Executive Director of Melbourne Housing Authority. This was our property. It did have public housing units on it. We do not intend to put public housing units back on any of this property. It won't be for extremely low-income people. The plan that you have before you, my board has not even seen. So I can't share anything with the public until my board approves me to do so. This is for zoning. It's conceptual. I was unaware after reading the zoning rules that we had to have a conceptual design plan, so we put that together. What you have before you are buildings, the 60-unit buildings we are underway financing in the Melbourne, the city of Melbourne currently. So we're planning on building that, and we're well on our way to getting that fully funded.
I guess, Dr. 1 minute, I want to ask.
Sure.
It is a matter of public record now, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And the other 4 building units on the smaller piece back there, we have actually built that as well. So these are buildings that we're very familiar with. We know the cost. We know how to get it funded. I believe the PUD was a long time ago, certainly before I came to Brevard County. They were not successful in getting the funding for that development. It was going to be much denser. I do not want to put a lot of traffic on the roads around there either. I think that the PUD had too many units for that area. As far as the crime rate goes, there will be security features built into the buildings. There will be other controls that we look at, such as hedges and lighting and things that we can do with the development of the property. I'm certain once we bring this to the county for site plan approval, the county will put stipulations into our development at that time. But today we're just trying to get the zoning so we know what we need to plan for in getting grants and funding together and a full concept.
Can you explain how it works with the grants? That you have to have some zoning before
You
explain
absolutely
that.
have, that's the first step. If you don't have a zoning, then you don't know how many units you can place on the property. So we need the zoning to even apply for either state or federal funding to help us with this project. As far as speaking with the residents around the area, we get a lot of our money from HUD. That's mandated. We'll probably have more than one meeting before we go into it, and we will address those concerns at the appropriate time, and that will be the site plan time. It's the stage after the zoning for us.
So that would be before you actually get into the major planning of this. You have to talk to neighbors in the process before you can ever get to the total site plan.
I will make that commitment tonight. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, I was listening to their concerns. I believe we addressed the traffic situation, correct? You found more ways to get people in and out without congesting the traffic. I also believe that this is a nice project, so I think it's going to make it a nice neighborhood and a nice area. The only one that caught my attention with what somebody said that I don't know if you're addressing, and you probably are, that if you have single families and then you got 3 stories, or there could be a privacy issue. Are you doing some kind of buffering back there, or setback, or?
Well, I'm certain the county will require a setback. Baxley Manor is 2-story, and the condos are 2-story. Where the single-family issue comes into play is over on Herwood. Herwood would be behind our property, and then there's duplexes in front of that, and those are single-story. The 4 buildings that you see on that back piece are going to be single stories. So I don't think that there will be a lighting. We were concerned about lighting.
Okay.
For security shining in people's bedrooms. We've thought about those things already. That's why we're not putting a 3 or 4-story building back there. That was the design in the PUD. There was going to be a 4-story building back there. We are also not going to exit any vehicles onto Herwood. It's a residential street, and they don't need a lot of traffic on that site. We do own property on Herwood. We could have a road access there, but we're not going to submit for that. So there won't be any additional traffic on Herwood.
Okay, Commissioner Barfield, is this a new light?
No, same one, but I'll
Oh.
go ahead. Okay, I think I have my answers now. Since I know HUD requires you to meet with neighbors and all that during the planning process, and you've committed to doing that.
Absolutely.
And all we're doing right now is we're actually changing the zoning to give it a zoning, so you can move forward to get this even started with speaking to anyone.
Yes.
So with that, I'll make a motion that we approve it.
Okay, I have a motion on the board. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Tobias. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. And thank you for working with the neighbors. Okay, we're moving into item 8, and it's item 9 together, correct, ma'am?
So item 8 is a proposal by Vinings Palm Bay Investment LLC, represented by Tom Cabrizio and Bruce Moya, requesting a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment from residential 15 to community commercial on a property that's 3.43 acres in size, located on the east side of Wickham Road, just south of Jordan Blast Drive. And the next item on your agenda, item 9, is a proposal on the same property, but for a change of zoning classification from RU215 to BU1, and a replacement of the existing BDP.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Moya.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. If you recall, I came to you on the last meeting, and we were tabled to talk some additional information. I got with Commissioner Smith. We had some correspondence. We had a meeting to discuss those concerns, and as far as I know, we've adequately addressed those concerns, so we're here tonight to get approval, and if there's more information that you need, let me know, and I'll be glad to go into my 5-minute dissertation. So I'll just here answer any questions if you have them.
Commissioner Smith. Oh, Tobias, I'm sorry, your light was on first, sir.
Thank you. As Commissioner Smith aptly pointed out, the generation of traffic is, I guess, 786%. It could lead to an F rating of level of service. And I asked staff what that would mean, and that would mean that all developments, I guess, in the area, the county would be responsible for paying for traffic improvements. Now, I understand you've met with Commissioner Smith, but obviously because of sunshine, I'm not privy to that. Can you let me and the rest of the board know whether or not that concern or how that concern has been alleviated?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Commissioner. I'll take you back a little bit of history on this project. Basically, this property is part of a 30-acre piece that was rezoned from PIP to residential multifamily. If you know anything about PIP zoning, it allows for any use in BU1, which is what we're asking for the 3 acres, BU2, and industrial. So it runs the gambit. We could put anything that we could have put on this 3 acres, we could have put on all 30. The traffic statement that was provided as part of the rezoning request, I don't understand how that works, because when I looked at it, the size of the building was larger than the property that we're asking for, so I don't understand those numbers. But basically, we've reduced the traffic potential for this site 90% when we downzoned it last year. So what has happened now is the property has changed hands. The new owners would like to retain a tenth of what the property was that they bought, to go to not back to PIP, which could have been anything, but just to BU1. And we assume it's going to be pretty similar development as what you're already seeing on Wickham Road in that area. We're actually providing, as part of a BDP, we are proposing that we would provide an easement to grant access to the light that's to the north, so there would not be, so there would be a way to get in and out of the property. And we also, as part of the development of the remaining 27 acres, we'll be providing pedestrian access so those residents can go use those facilities without having to get out on the road. So we believe that, that the traffic will not be 770%. I'm not the traffic engineer, so I don't really understand those numbers. I guess it's the potentially whatever the maximum development possibilities that property could entertain. I've never developed a 2-story retail facility on a 3-acre property that went from property line to property line and didn't meet, when you take setbacks and parking requirements and all that, I can't imagine the square foot of these buildings are going to be that big. And really what we're envisioning is 3 small parcels that would have some sort of small retail or restaurant on it, not some kind of shopping center that I think was used in the traffic report. So we believe that from the major downzoning that we asked for back last year, we've reduced that traffic potential so much that asking for this little bit back should not warrant a major concern on Wickham Road.
Madam Chair?
You still have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. And this follow-up is not going to be questioning anything you said. I would just like to bounce this off of staff, because I'm concerned about, again, that F level of service rating. And I saw Mr. Denninghoff over there talking on the edge of his seat, so I'm concerned. Did that answer, Mr. Denninghoff, satisfy you? I just don't want future liability here to be on the county for all developments in that area where we would have to pay for traffic improvement. So if you're here to say that answer, give it your blessing, then that's good enough for me.
The short answer is no. It did not answer my concerns or respond to my concerns, either one.
Thank you.
Mr. Denninghoff, would you tell us why?
Happy to. He did correctly state that what they're asking for is a slight increase, or an increase from what was previously approved. The concern that we have is twofold, but the main one is about a traffic signal and the potential for warning a traffic signal at that location, or at the location we would assume that they would build a driveway. If they were to make a commitment about development that would preclude the possibility of warranting a signal in the future, then that would alleviate the greatest part of our concerns.
Would you say that one more time? If they would?
If they were to make some sort of a commitment about their development pattern or the type of development that they would have that would prevent the result of warranting a traffic signal, then our biggest issues would be resolved, or concerns, I should say. The other concern is just the volume of traffic on Wickham Road. And our concerns on that would really be associated with providing some sort of a traffic study that would realistically portray what might be occurring there. We would need to include what's going to happen with the remainder of the rest of the site, not just the commercial portion. That's the subject of the zoning request tonight. But technically, I don't know that this particular piece would be likely to exceed the capacity of Wickham Road. The next piece might, or at least this segment of Wickham Road. So that concern is still there, but the bigger concern is the warning of a traffic signal. It is very conceivable that the property could develop and then result in a traffic signal being warranted, and then it would come to the taxpayers to provide the traffic signal in the future, or forego a traffic signal, or in the alternative, the third option would be to make modifications on Wickham Road that would preclude vehicle movements that would result in a signal. That would mean left turns and through movements through the intersection would be restricted. A limited median opening type of condition would have to be considered. So our concern is about the cost of a traffic signal or the cost of constructing modifications in Wickham Road at taxpayer expense to address if we avoided a traffic signal, either one of which is very expensive.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Smith.
Yes, I will disclose that Mr. Moya and myself have discussed this issue, and each time this comes up, I'm concerned about the traffic density on Wickham Road, and I'm still concerned that despite the fact that Mr. Moya has said that they've cut way back on what they say will be the traffic, I'm still concerned that we're going to exceed the capability of Wickham Road in this area. I believe we're somewhere in the 90 to 92% capacity on that road right now, and I would feel much, much more comfortable going forward if you guys would provide us with some kind of a traffic study that would show us what, I think you said that there were 4 or 5 different kinds of businesses that could go on that particular parcel. If we had some kind of an idea what the traffic study would indicate those businesses would yield, I'd feel a lot more comfortable making a definitive decision at that time.
So are we going to table this again? I thought that we had the concerns all talked about. I would have obviously met with more of the commissioners if there was this similar concern across the board. I mean, I don't know how many other BU1 properties are along Wickham Road. I'm sure there are quite a few. I can't imagine that a 3-acre would blow out Wickham on a typical BU1 type of development. Especially you've got, I mean, you haven't even built out the Fresh Market yet, and you've got pretty much the same thing going on there. So if they built those out parcels, that would be more so than what we're proposing right now, in addition to whatever other vacant properties exist on Wickham Road. Obviously, as far as I know, when we develop a piece of property and we have an impact on a road that puts it below the acceptable level of service, the responsibility is on the developer to make that improvement. John's partially right, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, John, that if we develop something that would warrant a signal, if we warrant the signal, then we have to install the signal, we pay for a signal, and then I believe the signal creates more capacity than what would be the impact of the development, and we would get some kind of impact fee credit back for installing that light. I don't think that signal would be a burden on the taxpayers unless the trips that were generated weren't enough to cover the impact fee credit. Does that sound about right?
It would depend on the actual trips that are generated as to whether or not
Right.
there would be a reimbursement available. But more importantly, it would only be a burden on the developer to do that if it was identified at the time of site plan approval that there was going to be a warrant triggered on the signal. It could be a result of the next development that takes place on Wickham Road that all of a sudden a signal is warranted. And in which case, we may not have imposed that on the developer in this particular case. And further, the location, it's not just the cost of the signal, it's also the location of the signal. It's too close to Jordan Glass to meet our separation criteria that we utilize for traffic signals for smooth operations to exist on the road. And so it wouldn't actually improve capacity, it would actually erode capacity.
Thank you. Commissioner Tobias?
I just had a couple quick questions for Mr. Denninghoff. You said quite a bit of money. Can you ballpark how much, I have no idea how much a traffic signal would cost or what a modification to Wickham Road. Can you give me a ballpark estimate if we were to go ahead and do that, what the burden would be on the taxpayer?
I believe the last signal that we built that would be similar to the one that would be required here would be pretty close to about $800,000 in cost. It's difficult to tell before you understand what all is going to be occurring there, but that would include turn lanes and other features. At this location, it would have to be mast and arm type traffic signal due to proximity to the coast and wind load requirements. So they're pretty costly.
Commissioner Isnardi?
I guess my only question is that, you know, and you brought it up too, because I know we had another development where we shared cost of a signal. I'm just a little concerned that we're saying no to a potential development on what might happen, maybe sort of kind of, we may need a traffic signal based on the amount of traffic we have. Now, you can say it's likely, but we're not committing that it will have an impact, but maybe a future development after that. If we're so paranoid about what's going on Wickham Road, then maybe we should do no development, because I think anybody that wants to do any kind of development that's warranted there is going to have an impact on traffic, whether it be, you know, big or small. So I think we're unfairly targeting this project, and I'm not sure exactly why. I mean, I can't explain it. I don't know if it's, you know, the fact that your developer or your person requesting the rezoning doesn't have, you know, a definitive plan. But I think that using this, you know, our guesstimate based on if we were to put a building from property end to property end speaks volumes to what we're sort of predicting what the traffic volume will be. Because who builds a building from property line to property line? I mean, I've never seen anybody.
Well, that's why a traffic study would answer those questions.
Perhaps if they knew what they were going to be developing for sure. But I just think just to say, no, we're not going to allow for rezoning, I mean, that's through the development process, correct? Don't they have to do a traffic study when they have the project?
Yes. Whenever they submit a site plan, they would, in all probability, be required to go ahead and submit.
Right, so I don't understand what the problem is. If we do a traffic study in that case, we would find out if it was going to be the project, the end-all be-all project on busy Wickham Road, if this one small parcel would require a traffic light. I mean, we would find that out in the development process, correct?
The challenge here, yeah, the short answer to that is yes, we would. The challenge here is about the logical place for them to place a driveway with this piece of property as it's currently proposed is directly across the street from an existing driveway, which sets the stage for the need for a traffic signal at a location which is otherwise not really acceptable. The larger piece of property, when it was in for rezoning and under consideration recently, had the ability to place a driveway at multiple locations that would have been acceptable, and one of them is very acceptable for a traffic signal. And so the concern from a staff perspective at that time didn't really exist so much. At this point, we're looking at an increase, we think, with absent a traffic study. We think it's going to result in an increase from what currently exists. But more importantly, it's actually going to isolate this area from the greater parcel from a traffic perspective and limit its location of driveways to only one, really, that makes very good sense, and it sets the stage for that traffic signal. And we would then be faced with either closing the median opening in some form or fashion after existing businesses were there, or considering some mechanism to go ahead and fund a traffic signal. And that's the challenge we have. And so other than that, I think it's a board policy decision.
But we would still find out those answers through the process when they bring the project, correct?
We would only find out if one was clearly warranted immediately as a result of the proposed project, which we would, of course, know more about that at that time. Typically, a traffic study that is performed that is, I would say, a reasonable and good, valid traffic study considers a variety of potential uses which are reasonable for the parcel that's involved, and so wouldn't have to assume something that's really extreme or something that's the opposite of extreme in terms of intensity. It could be very mild, but neither of those is probable. It's probably going to be someplace in between. What we don't know is exactly what will that impact be, and the study would potentially give us more information about that and could trigger a warrant analysis based on proposed trips.
Commissioner Barfield.
Yes, we've been through this on August 2nd, and I believe what we said, if my memory correct, we asked you to get a traffic study. And did we not mention that? Didn't we say that? So here we are still doing this, and we don't have a traffic study. So, I don't know what to say. We're going to keep waiting for this traffic study. It's not going to appear, or what? And that's...
Well, as far as I know, what's required when we ask for rezoning is the transportation engineer does an analysis of what potentially could happen on the site, because we don't know. It could be a restaurant, it could be a shoe store, it could be, I don't know. So what they do is they take the uses that are in the zoning district, I think in this case they took 3 samples of the most extreme ones that could possibly be there, because I think they're required to take the worst case scenario, and they take the floor area ratio, and they apply that, and they say, okay, well, if the floor area ratio on BU1 zoning is 3, I don't know what it is, they say, okay, you got 3 acres, you've got, 9 acres worth of building, and we got 3 different uses, and this is what you can put on the property. I don't know how valid that really is. I mean, to me, that doesn't sound very valid. I mean, I could ask for a traffic study, but for what?
I think
I don't really know. And so I would want to ask the question, how many 3-acre parcels that have access to a light would warrant a light in a distance that would not meet the separation requirements for the county?
Right, but last time you were here, we had the discussion. I was kind of hoping you'd come in and see me too, because we could have talked about this, because this has a potential to have gas stations on it and drive-throughs, which is a lot of traffic, which is going to cause a lot of problems. So would you be willing then, because we asked this before, to put some constrictions on it, not to, like John had mentioned, not to try not to do anything that would make to have to warn another traffic signal? Would that be something you'd be willing to do because of concerns, or?
I mean, I think we'd be willing to do anything reasonable. I don't know how to give you a traffic study for something we don't know what's going to go there. If you want to pick some uses and say, realistically, if this is what you built, what would the impact be, and would that warrant a signal? I guess we could do that exercise. I think that's highly unusual.
Yeah. Well, Ms. Bentley, how do we do that when we just have some concerns? What is it that we do when you have concerns?
We sometimes use mining development plans to address the uses that are particularly difficult for the neighborhood or
Okay.
a negative impact to the
So would that be something that maybe you'd be willing to do or anything? Or
Sure. If there's specific uses that you would not like to see on this property, we would be happy to take that back to the applicant and see if he's willing to put a restriction on the property.
Well, one of the, just a couple of things that come to my mind. If you had a pizza joint versus a shoe store versus a McDonald's, I think those are three very distinctly different businesses that would definitely create vast differences in traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And you could put any one of those three there, or you could put all three there.
Yeah, if the McDonald's across the street moved across the street to be on our property, I guess we could do that. I'm not really great at traffic. I don't understand what generates traffic and what generates turns. Because to me, if you put a gas station there and you've got a gas station 3 blocks away, you're not bringing traffic to the area to go to the gas station. You're just taking trips off the road and putting them back on the road. They're already driving down that road. It's called bypass, I think is what it's called, or I don't even know. John knows. He's the guru. But a use like this is not a destination. It's something that's going to be used by the people that are already on the road. So as far as generating more trips on the road, I don't think a 3-acre project really does that, and especially 3 1-acre parcels don't do that. I mean, I don't think too many people are going to a convenience store that live 3 miles away that could go to another convenience store they have to pass to go to that convenience store. So they're either going that way on the way to work or back, or they're already on the road and they say, hey, I'm going to grab a burger while I'm on the road and then go. So I don't know how that meets traffic warrants, but I've just never seen a project this small warrant a light when there's already access to a light. I've just never seen it. Have you, John? I've never seen it.
I think that's what we're trying to discover. We want to see if this is going to impact that, because as I said, my concern is that section of Wickham Road is really, really close to capacity. And so it's not going to take much to tip it. That's my concern.
Right.
And so let's change it from a McDonald's to a Burger King. We don't have a Burger King there. And I think Burger King would generate from neighbors that would say, hey, let's go out and get a burger. Or if there's a shoe store, well, let's go there instead of Kohl's. So they're going to make a trip. So it's not just something that they're driving by and say, okay, let's just pull in there, because in that scenario, you're not increasing traffic. You're taking traffic off the road for a few minutes. But you could conceivably have businesses there that will generate traffic that would not ordinarily be just coming and going east and west or north and south, whichever direction Wickham Road goes there. So that's why I'm saying if we could do some kind of a traffic study with the various types of businesses, then we would have a better idea, because if we need another traffic signal there, as Mr. Denninghoff said, we have to move it away from where that parcel is, because it would be too close to Jordan Blast. And we're looking at a significant amount of money. And I don't want the county to have to pony up $800,000 in a year and a half or 2 years because we didn't do our due diligence up here.
True, and I agree. And I guarantee that they don't want to put a signal there, because it's a lot of cost to the developer as well as to whatever portion the county would have to pay to meet whatever additional capacity we're creating. We normally do that through impact fee credit, so that there's no money coming from the county. We're doing a light on Wickham where we're having just that issue. It's a much bigger project, and the developer's paying for all the turn lanes, and they're paying for the light, and they're just asking for impact fee credit. So there's no blood anywhere. I don't know what would happen here. Surely, if we never went for rezoning on that property and we had 30 acres of PIP, we would have blown the road out, and we wouldn't even have asked for permission for that. We were already zoned PIP. We could have put the most intense use on there and then just dealt with the consequences going through staff and providing whatever traffic improvements were required. All they're asking for is 10% back of just BU1, not even PEIP that they used to have. That could have been way more intense, but if you really are not okay with that, I wish I had known. I would have met with all of you. I only thought that you had the concern. I would have definitely met with everybody. We will, if you want, table it again. I mean, the transportation engineer we're using used to be the traffic engineer here, so I know he knows what he's doing. He can talk to John, and we can come up with something that makes sense and bring it to you in writing, if that's what you want. It's the first I've ever done it that way, but we'd be happy to do it if that makes you feel comfortable.
It would make me feel a lot better.
Okay. And I don't know what's going to happen to Wickham Road if we don't build in the next 5 years. Wickham Road could go to capacity in 2 years if something else gets developed down the road. So I just don't know. Wickham's something that's going to be dealt with regardless of this project or not. I don't think it's that intense, but we'll be happy to do a report to see what would happen if they built today, and I think they would do some future projections and to see at what point it may or may not warrant a signal, and we'll try to come up with some uses, and if there's some uses that just warrant a signal, we'll see if we can just take that out and put it in the BDP that we won't do that use. If that makes sense, then we'd be happy to do that. So if that's what you want us to do, then I would request that you table this and give us time to do that for you. Or if you could approve it, that would be what I'd really like you to do. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Do we need to make a motion to table this?
2, please.
For both
If
of
you could
them?
separate this one, thank you.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to table number 8.
Do you have a date you'd like to table it to? Would you like a month or?
What would be the next?
October 4th?
That would work.
October.
Okay.
That would work.
Okay, I have a
Table
mo-
it to October 4th.
I have a motion on the floor to table item 8 till October the 4th. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Tabaya. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Smith, do you want to make a motion for number 9?
Yes, I will make a motion to table item 9 to October 4th.
Okay, I have a motion on the table to table item 9. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Tabaya and Commissioner Isnardi.
And my only comment would be, I'll support the rest of the commission on this, is that I hope that we applied the same amount of scrutiny, because I think this is unfairly targeting this, the property owner of Bruce Moya, because we've not done this much with any other people, and to say that one small business would warrant a traffic, what burden do the other businesses that generate traffic on Wickham have as part of that? That would be unfairly burdening them if we were to say, your client A has to burden the cost of the traffic signal because you've just increased it, not satisfactory to what the county believes could possibly happen.
Well, I can answer that. This particular section of Wickham Road is unique in
Right,
that
I know where it is.
we're really close to capacity. So any one of many types of businesses could tilt that, and then we incur an awful lot of expense to improve that area with turn lanes and signals. So that is why I am scrutinizing this so much.
And I agree that, okay, your client, unfortunately, it has to be the target of possibly tipping it, which, I guess your traffic study, I have a feeling may be a little bit different than ours. If they're the guilty party of tipping it, they now, have the entire burden now of the traffic signal. I don't get how that's fair and equitable. That's just I just wanted that comment for the record because I think it's unfairly burdening. Maybe perhaps he'll have an idea of what he wants to do there to make this a little more agreeable for the rest of the commission, but.
Thank you. I understand your point on that, other than, with the discussion last time, if you would have came and saw me, because you get some high traffic in there because it is almost at capacity, and we do have other people come along with suggestions, help to make their process go through better. So I don't think this is not typical, maybe the traffic study, but, there could have been other creative ways. But I'm not sure it's not typical of this commission because, we study it out and take each one separately, and I kind of like you, and I like your project, so it's nothing personal with that. I have a motion on the table in the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. And we'll see you soon, sir. Certainly.
Just real quickly, I wanted to thank staff on this. I think Mr. Deddinghoff and folks went above and beyond. If you looked at the packet, they actually had, we talked about creative alternatives. They provided some of that to the developer, and while I appreciate all the work they do, I think that's going above and beyond. I think that's probably the job of the gentleman that just left to come up with alternatives, and the fact that staff is doing that just is I don't think gets recognized enough. So thank you so much for trying to work around, and I wish the folks that come up here would use that valuable experience that you provide to them.
I think we have a great staff, very creative also. Item 10.
Yes, item 10 is a request for the Board of County Commissioners to conduct the first public hearing to approve revisions to Chapter 62, Article 6, Division 4, Subdivision 7, Section 62, 15, 11, to remove the maximum density requirements in the general tourist commercial zoning classification.
Thank you, sir. I have two cards on this. I have a Dewey Freeman. Yes, sir.
This is an area along US 1 in Micco. Pretty busy area, to say the least. Well, I live in Summit Cove, right behind this development that they want to do here. A lot of single-family homes, apartments and whatnot, a lot of kids. My understanding is they want to take these three parcels and make them one to put a very large building, trying to get actually the limits for the southern end of the county, like 36, 38 feet or something. In that area, we've got a lot of wildlife. We've got gopher turtles, we've got rabbits, owls, foxes, eagles, ospreys. The power grid is really weak on the very southern end there. As of right now, they have an outdoor bar that has no buffer whatsoever. They're advertising to bring in motorcycles and whatnot to, literally signs, bikers welcome. This is a really quiet community, and now it's getting loud, getting worse, and I'm kind of fearful for what these people plan to do next. And realistically, my kids live there. I don't want to see this project, but these three parcels come together and become this giant building that is kind of their plans to do. So the traffic is bad enough as it is there. At least maybe along the lines of these folks here with the traffic study is something that needs to be done too, because this is right on US 1 on the west side of the road. It's a beautiful area. We have a river view right where we're at. This would really hurt us if they put in this giant, this giant building in this place. We don't have the sewer for it. Now, I do understand they're trying to add sewer to get down to the Chubby Mullet, but as of right now, there is no sewer down there. This place doesn't have the capacity for it either, so just want to let you folks know kind of what's going on, and I'd like to see some, at the very least, a traffic study, because it's a dangerous stretch of road there, and I want my kids to have a nice, safe place to live. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Bonnie Shaw?
Hello. I am a new owner at Summit Cove, and I apologize that I look like this, and I am not prepared. I was told at our last meeting, we had a meeting on August 27th, that this meeting was changed to October 4th. So I was going to come in October 4th just to support the group because I'm new, and I don't want them to build a 5-story resort. It's rough. Anyhow, I like it just like it is. That's why I moved up from Miami to Micco. I love it. And there was a lot of people signed. All the things, they were talking at our meeting, all the things, the changes, everybody was against everything. They signed papers, they were going to come to the meeting. I was just going to come to support. My neighbor just called me and said, will you take me? The meeting is tonight. So I came like I am, picked her up, and we're here. But there is a letter, I don't know if you got it or not, but people signed it, but they think it's October 4th. And they were saying about they're going to build this 5-story motel, and they wanted to put a driveway in where our entrance is, and of course everybody's against that, so they'd have 3 ways in. We didn't want that. And I was told, which I'm just going by hearsay, but at the meeting, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with Summit Cove. They have like these 2 cement things that say Summit Cove, and they're supposed to be, I guess, so many feet away from it. They're right. I mean, it's like right here, and here's our thing. They have all these tables and chairs, and then they built a thing, and they're playing music all night long. I mean, it's right. I don't think you can be that close. That's what I was told. And if I had known I was coming, and I would have took pictures. I would have printed them out and showed you how close. But anyhow, did you get the letter that everybody signed? I don't think you did, because they think it's moved to October. Did anybody get a letter? No? Okay. See, they think it was moved. That's why I'm not prepared, and I was just going to come to show support. But they were saying in the letter, some of the things they were saying, everybody's against the rezoning, and about the noise, like you were saying, and the way of life. They play music till late at night. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but we're a community of children and a lot of retired people, and that's why we live in Micco. We love it. We love Micco, and it's a wonderful place to live. But we are against the rezoning. Trying to think what else. I am not prepared, so I'm just trying to. I was just coming to support whoever was. But they're, like I said, they're not here because they think the meeting was moved. I can't think of anything else. I don't know official things. I don't know the laws. I don't know, but I know a lot of the people there, everybody I spoke to, they don't want this to happen. They would like it the way it is, and I don't know if there's anything we can do about it, but I hope we can. Is there any advice you could give me that I could pass on, or we should be doing?
I don't know right now, ma'am. I'm going to open it up for the commission discussion, and
Okay.
maybe just listening in on that and seeing where we're...
So this isn't passed, though, yet, to change this
Mr. Perkins?
rezoning, right?
We can clarify that items 1 and 2 are the items that I believe that you two are both providing public comment on, and those
Right.
are tabled until October 4th.
October 4th.
So the proposal that you're speaking about is just a change to the TU1 zoning classification, which is across the county. So I think that your public comment is better reserved for when that
October
particular
4th.
item.
So what are they doing today? Are you voting on anything?
We're doing a county-wide zoning change for all of the county tonight. We're tweaking up a zoning.
So you won't be changing the zoning for those 3 trying to come together?
Well, it could be part of what we're doing today, but as Ms. Aaron had just stated, we believe what you're going to be wanting to target in on is items 1 and 2 that got tabled tonight. That'll probably be the meeting that you're going to want to address.
Is there any way to get a printout of what Jens were reading off about zoning this, one, and all that stuff you were saying of the official?
Tell you what, I'm going to have Marcia find you in just a second, and we'll get whatever you need.
I don't
and we'll
know
see if we
anything
can get you
about
information.
This is my first time buying into a community, so.
You're delightful. Thank you.
I'm sorry to come like this, but I was not ready.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Isnardi.
Actually, that's what I was going to correct. I was going to let this nice young lady know that this item is October 4th. Yes. Now, this item you could say is related to it, sort of, but it doesn't rezone anything. It doesn't change that property there. It's a county-wide thing that we probably shouldn't have had in place anyway before, so we're correcting that. At least this board decided to move that forward. But it's sort of like we kind of started talking about this because of this. However, we're not making any decisions on that till the 4th, so you're safe until then.
Commissioner Tabaya.
Thank you, and thanks for getting involved. This is a countywide ordinance. This is just the first hearing on this one. So if the October 4th doesn't ameliorate, once you find out that doesn't, we're just pushing this along to another hearing. The next hearing on this will be 9/18. So there's got to be one more public hearing on this one. So if you look over items 1 and 2, I think one of us would be more than willing to get with you, and you're still not satisfied, you still have the opportunity, this is a countywide ordinance, to come and on the 18th. So this item will be automatically up again, is what I'm trying to say. And you're dressed, judging what I'm wearing, perfectly appropriately. So we welcome you back in that and any attire at the next meeting.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the first hearing. Do I need a motion?
Make a motion, we approve this for the first hearing.
Okay, I have a motion for the first hearing approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Isnardi. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0, and we'll see you guys in a month. We are through all of the items we had tonight. I have no unfinished business.
You do have J1?
I do have J1.
This is the request for board direction or a request for an executive session, depending on the board's desire, in the case of Brevard County versus State of Florida, case number 05-2018-CA-018298. You've been provided two options. The first option would be not to appeal the finding of the trial court, and option two would be to request an executive session to discuss the appeal in more detail.
Thank you. I think we did due diligence of what we were required to do. This is back at the time when Mr. Knox was here. And from the commission before us, I think it was promised to Blue Origin at the time to try to pay it all up front. And I think we satisfied that right now by doing what we needed to do. So I'm comfortable with not appealing and just moving forward with how we're doing currently now and letting the North Brevard Economic Development Zone just make payments as they promised on the other path. Mr. Barfield.
I totally agree with that. I completely agree with that. We followed the process of the agreement, and now it's very clear. They need to make the payments.
Okay, do I have a motion for that for Ms. Bentley?
I'll make a motion that we do not appeal.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Isnardi. Do I have a second by Commissioner Barfield? All in favor to not appeal, say aye. Aye. Opposed, passes 5-0. Now, we have completed all the business for the evening. We're at board reports. County Manager.
I have one item, Commissioners. I'm seeking board authorization to continue with the submission of a grant application to the Florida Communities Trust Stan Mayfield Working Waterfronts Program for Blue Crab Cove. We have Matt Culver with the Boating and Waterways Program Coordinator. We believe this is a good grant. There's no required match, and it will be a significant enhancement to both property and construction for this effort. And Matt's here to answer any questions if the board has any. Otherwise, we would just seek your authorization to move forward.
Thank you, sir. Do I have, is that an old light, sir, or a new one?
No, I'll make the motion
Mr.
to authorize to go ahead and pursue the grant.
I have a motion by Commissioner Barfield. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, passes 5-0. County Attorney.
No report.
Commissioner Barfield.
No report.
Commissioner Tabaya.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And there was some discussion about Novus at our last meeting, and I just wanted to throw in the 2 cents of County Commission District 3. We recognize that there are some minor problems with the software, but speaking with my staff, it's apparent that the county manager's effort to move forward with this new software saves my particular office about 8 hours worth of work per month. So we notice there could be some improvements, ones that I think IT can work out as we move forward. But not only does this save time for our office, it saves paper and ink and other supplies like that. So again, I just hope we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, not to account for all the time that staff has put in for training on all this stuff. So thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Smith.
No report.
Commissioner Isnardi.
No report.
And I have no report either, so I'll call this meeting adjourned. Y'all have a great weekend.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.